Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became Superman's successor? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was not fair. That was the first lesson Izuku Midoriya had ever learned, etched into the soft clay of his childhood soul at the tender age of 4. It was a lesson taught by a doctor with cold hands and an indifferent clinical tone, reinforced by the apologetic tears of a mother who didn't know how to fix him, and cemented by the explosive palms of a boy who had once been his friend. The world was built on inequality. It was a chaotic, vibrant, terrifying hierarchy where 80% of the population possessed the power to reshape reality, quirks, and the remaining 20% were left to watch from the sidelines. And then, there was Izuku. At 14 years old, the lesson had evolved. It was no longer just about fairness. It was about erasure. To be quirkless in a superhuman society was to be invisible. It was to be a ghost haunting a world of gods, screaming to be heard while people walked right through you. Or, in the case of Katsuki Bakugo, walked right over you. Don't you get it, Deku? The smell of burnt sugar and nitroglycerin hung heavy in the classroom air. Izuku flinched, his back pressed against the chalkboard, his eyes wide and trembling. Katsuki stood over him, flanked by his lackeys. He was a portrait of arrogant perfection, the crisp uniform, the jagged ash-blonde hair, the small, threatening pops of explosions dancing in his palm like captive fireflies. We're third years now, Katsuki sneered, a cruel grin stretching across his face. Time to think about the future. And looking at the aptitude forms, it seems you're still delusional. He snatched the notebook from Izuku's desk. Keikaken, please, Izuku stammered, reaching out. That's my... Boom. With a casual flex of his fingers, Katsuki detonated a small explosion against the cover of the notebook. Smoke curled into the air. Izuku watched in horror as his hero analysis for the future 13 months of painstaking notes, drawings, and strategies, was reduced to a charred, smoking brick. You're applying for UA, Katsuki said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You. The pebble on the side of the road. You think you can stand in the same ring as me? I just want to try, Izuku whispered, looking at his shoes. There's no rule that says I can't. There is a rule, Katsuki hissed, leaning in close enough that Izuku could feel the heat radiating from his skin. It's the rule of reality. You're a quirkless reject. You're worse than a villain, Deku. At least villains have power. He tossed the burned notebook out the open window. Izuku watched it arc through the sky, spiraling down toward the koi pond below. If you want to be a hero so badly, Katsuki said, turning to leave, his lackeys snickering behind him. There's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll be born with a quirk in the next life. The words hung in the air, heavier than the smoke. Izuku stood there long after the classroom had emptied. His hands were shaking. He wanted to scream. He wanted to chase after them. He wanted to summon fire, or ice, or super strength, and show them that he mattered. But he couldn't. He walked over to the window. He looked down at the pond where fish were nibbling at his burnt dreams. Idiot, Izuku whispered to himself, his voice cracking. If I really jumped, that would be inciting suicide. You'd be in so much trouble, Kaken. He forced a smile onto his face. It was a painful, brittle thing. He had to smile. All Might always smiled. And if he stopped smiling now, he felt like he might simply dissolve into tears and never stop. The walk home was a blur of gray concrete and harsh sunlight. Izuku retrieved his sodden notebook, muttering consolations to himself as he tried to dab the water off the pages. It's okay. Most of the ink is still legible. I can copy it over tonight. He took the shortcut through the underpass. It was a gloomy tunnel, the walls slick with grime, shadows clinging to the corners. It was the kind of place people usually avoided, but Izuku was too lost in his own misery to pay attention to the warning bells ringing in his instincts. He was muttering, trying to psych himself up. I just have to study harder. If I can't use power, I'll use data. I'll use gadgets. A sound came from the manhole cover behind him. A wet, slurping noise. Izuku turned. Liquid darkness erupted from the sewer. It surged upward, swelling into a massive viscous shape. Eyes, huge, manic, and rolling, floated in the muck. A mouth formed from the sludge, revealing jagged yellow teeth, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. The monster gurgled. Its voice sounded like drowning. Izuku froze. His legs locked. The fear was instantaneous and paralyzing. "You'll do nicely," the villain hissed, lunging forward. Before Izuku could scream, the sludge hit him. It was cold and smelled of rot and old sewage. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose, filling his throat. "I can't breathe." He clawed at the liquid, but his fingers passed right through. It was like trying to fight water. The villain laughed, the sound vibrating through the slime covering Izuku's ears. "Don't struggle, kid. It'll only hurt for a minute. I just need to hide inside you until the hero leaves town." "I'm going to die," Izuku thought. The realization was sharp and clear. "I'm going to die here, in a sewer tunnel, and no one will know. My notebook. Mom." His vision began to spot with black. His lungs burned. The strength fled his limbs. "Help me, someone, anyone." Suddenly, the manhole cover clattered loudly. "Have no fear," a voice boomed. It wasn't just a voice. It was a force of nature, deep and resonant, echoing off the concrete walls with a power that seemed to push back the shadows. "Why?" "Because I am here," the villain shrieked. All Might. Through the blurring slime, Izuku saw him. A towering figure in a white t-shirt, backlit by the light from the tunnel entrance. The symbol of peace. All Might moved faster than thought. Texas. Smash! The punch didn't even connect with the sludge. It didn't have to. The air pressure alone was a cannon blast. The wind pressure spiraled through the tunnel, ripping the villain apart, scattering the sludge across the walls like paint. Air rushed back into Izuku's lungs. He gasped, falling to his knees, coughing up bile and slime. As he drifted into unconsciousness, the last thing he saw was the giant, smiling figure towering over him. He really came. When Izuku woke up, he was being slapped gently on the cheek. Hey! Hey! Good! Izuku's eyes snapped open. The face of All Might filled his vision. All Might! Izuku scrambled backward, his heart hammering against his ribs. You're really him. I am. All Might laughed, striking a pose. And you are safe. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. I usually keep the city cleaner than this. Izuku looked around. The villain was bottled up in 2 soda bottles All Might had in his grocery bag. An autograph. I need a. He grabbed his notebook. It was already signed, a massive, sweeping signature across 2 pages. Thank you? It's a family heirloom. Izuku bowed so low his forehead nearly hit the asphalt. Think nothing of it. All Might gave a thumbs up. Now, I must be off to turn this guy in. Stay safe, citizen. The hero crouched, his powerful leg muscles tensing. Wait! Izuku shouted. All Might launched himself into the sky. Without thinking, driven by a desperation he couldn't control, Izuku lunged. He grabbed onto All Might's leg just as the hero took off. The wind whipped at his face, pulling his cheeks back. The ground fell away instantly. Hey! Let go! I love my fans, but this is excessive. All Might shouted over the wind, trying to push Izuku off. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku screamed, his eyes tearing up. Oh. Good point. They landed on a rooftop a few moments later. Izuku collapsed, wheezing, his adrenaline crashing. That was dangerous, All Might chided, though his steam seemed to be running low. I really must go now. Wait. Izuku scrambled up. Please. I have to ask you something. All Might paused, his back to the boy. I don't have much time. Izuku clenched his fists at his sides. This was it. The question that had burned in his heart for 10 years. The question that would decide his fate. Can I be a hero? Izuku's voice trembled. Even if I don't have a quirk? Silence stretched across the rooftop. The wind rustled the drying pages of the notebook. Can someone without power save people like you do? Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. I've always been picked on. I'm weak. But I want to save people. I want to smile and say it's okay like you. I want to be a hero. He opened his eyes, waiting for the affirmation. Waiting for the yes. Instead, there was a hiss of steam. Where All Might had stood, a skeleton of a man now slouched. He was gaunt, his eyes sunken into deep shadows, his clothes hanging loosely on a frame that looked like it might snap in a stiff breeze. What? Izuku shrieked. An impostor? I assure you, I am All Might, the man sighed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. He sat down heavily. He lifted his shirt, revealing a gruesome, spiraling scar that covered half his torso. It looked like a crater. 5 years ago, a villain did this to me, All Might said softly. Half my respiratory organs were destroyed. I lost my entire stomach. I've had repeated surgeries and have wasted away. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. Izuku stared, horrified. 5 years ago. Toxic chainsaw? You know your stuff. But no, a punk like that couldn't do this. This fight. The world doesn't know about it. I am the symbol of peace. I have to be the guy who's always smiling. But the truth is, All Might looked down at his hands. I smiled to trick the fear inside me. He looked up at Izuku. The hero's eyes were not unkind, but they were devastatingly serious. Pros are always risking their lives. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. So no, the world stopped. I cannot simply say you can become a hero without power. It is not realistic. Izuku felt like he had been punched in the gut. The air left the rooftop. If you want to help people, All Might continued, standing up and walking toward the door to the stairwell, become a police officer. They get teased a lot, but it's a fine profession. Or a doctor. He opened the door. It's not wrong to dream, young man. But you have to see the reality. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone. He didn't know how long he stood there. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the city in hues of bruised purple and bloody orange. Not realistic, Izuku whispered. The greatest hero in the world had confirmed what Katsuki, his mother, and the doctor had said. It was unanimous. The jury had returned the verdict, guilty of being useless. He walked down the stairs like a zombie. He wandered the streets without direction. He didn't want to go home. He couldn't face his mother yet. Maybe Kaken was right, a dark voice whispered in his ear. Maybe in the next life. He turned a corner and nearly walked into a man sitting on a crate in a dirty alleyway. Oh, I'm sorry, Izuku mumbled, stepping back. The man was older, perhaps in his late 50s or early 60s, though it was hard to tell. He wore a faded red and black flannel shirt that had seen better decades, worn jeans, and thick-rimmed glasses that were cracked down the middle. He had a shock of black hair that was graying at the temples, but it was his condition that made Izuku pause. The man was trembling. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his skin had a sickly, pale gray undertone. He looked like he was fighting just to draw a breath. Water. The man rasped. The word was Japanese, but the accent was strange, thick, heavy, like he was shaping the sounds around a tongue not meant for them. Izuku's own misery was pushed aside by instinct. Wait here. He ran to a vending machine at the mouth of the alley, dug out his last few coins, and bought a bottle of water. He ran back, twisting the cap off, and handed it to the stranger. The man drank greedily, some of the water spilling onto his flannel. He coughed, wiping his mouth with a shaking hand. He looked up at Izuku. His eyes were blue. Not the pale blue of a summer sky, but a deep, piercing blue, like the heart of a star. Even through the cracked glasses and the illness, those eyes held a weight that made Izuku want to stand up straighter. Thank you, son, the man said. He took a deep breath, seeming to stabilize slightly. I haven't been able to keep much down lately. The solar energy here, it's different. The wavelength is shifted. Izuku didn't understand the science, but he understood pain. Do you need a hospital? I can call an ambulance. The man shook his head with a weak smile. No hospitals. They can't help me. My biology is unique. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him. You look like you've had a worse day than I have. Izuku laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You could say that. My dreams just died. Dreams have a habit of doing that, the man said softly. But they also have a habit of coming back when you least expect them. He glanced at the burned notebook Izuku was clutching. Hero notes? Trash, Izuku corrected. Just trash. A loud explosion echoed through the city streets. The ground shook. A plume of smoke rose a few blocks away. Screams began to drift on the wind. Izuku flinched. A villain attack. Trouble, the man said. He stood up. It was a slow, painful process. He leaned against the brick wall for support. You shouldn't move, Izuku said. The heroes will handle it. Will they? The man adjusted his glasses. He looked toward the smoke, his expression tightening. I hear them. The people. They're terrified. You can hear them from here? Izuku asked, confused. I can hear a lot of things, the man murmured. He took a step forward, stumbling. Izuku caught him. You can barely walk. I have to go, the man said, and for a second, the frailty vanished, replaced by a resolve harder than steel. Someone might need help. Izuku didn't know why, but he didn't let go of the man's arm. I'll help you get to safety. But we should stay away from the fight. They moved toward the crowd. Izuku told himself he just wanted to make sure the man didn't collapse. He told himself he wasn't going to watch. He was done with heroes. But as they rounded the corner, Izuku saw the scene, and his blood turned to ice. It was the same alleyway. The fires were spreading. The pro-heroes, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, were standing around, helpless. My quirk isn't suitable. I can't get close to the fire. We have to wait for someone with the right quirk. And in the center of the inferno, surrounded by a sea of flames, was the sludge villain. I hit the jackpot. The villain roared, his body pulsing. With this kid's quirk and body, I can take on All Might. Inside the sludge, a face gasped for air. Red eyes. Ash blonde hair. Kaken. Izuku stopped breathing. It's my fault. The bottle fell when I grabbed All Might. I did this. The stranger beside him stiffened. Why aren't they moving? The man asked, his voice low and angry. The child is dying. They don't have the right quirks, Izuku whispered, parroting the excuses he'd heard all his life. They're waiting. Waiting? The man's grip on the wall crushed a brick into dust. You don't wait when a life is on the line. Izuku looked at the heroes. They were just watching. Calculating. Then he looked at Bakugo. For the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo looked terrified. His eyes met Izuku's across the flames. There was no arrogance there. Just a silent plea. Help me. Izuku's legs moved before his brain gave the order. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms shouted. Izuku didn't hear him. He sprinted past the police line. He ignored the heat singeing his eyebrows. He ignored the logic that said he was useless. I have nothing. I can do nothing. But I can't just stand there. He reached the villain. He swung his backpack, the heavy buckle slamming into the villain's eye. Gah! The sludge recoiled. For a second, the grip loosened. Bakugo gasped, coughing up smoke. Deku? Bakugo wheezed. What the hell are you doing here? My legs moved on their own. Izuku screamed, clawing at the sludge with his bare hands. I don't know why. You looked like you were asking for help, you little gnat. The villain recovered. The sludge surged, forming a massive whip. I'll crush you. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. I'm sorry, Mom. The blow came down, but it never hit. There was a sound like a thunderclap, followed instantly by a sound like a glacier cracking. Whoosh! The heat vanished. Izuku opened his eyes. Standing in front of him was the man in the flannel shirt. He stood with his back to Izuku, one arm raised as if to shield them. But he hadn't touched the villain. The sludge whip was frozen solid in midair, a jagged sculpture of ice. The villain shrieked, but the sound was cut short. The man took a deep breath, his chest expanding, and exhaled. It wasn't a normal breath. It was a hurricane of Arctic wind. A cone of pure white cold erupted from his mouth. The fire in the alley was snuffed out instantly. The sludge villain didn't just freeze, he flash froze. In less than a second, the terrifying monster was reduced to a statue of suspended animation, the eyes crystal clear and harder than diamond. Silence fell over the street. The pro-heroes stared. The crowd stared. Even Bakugo, shivering in the sudden drop in temperature, stared. The man in the flannel shirt swayed. He coughed, and this time, blood splattered onto the icy ground. You! The man turned to Izuku. He wasn't looking at the villain. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking only at Izuku. You moved. Izuku trembled. Grab on, the man whispered. What? The man grabbed Izuku by the back of his uniform collar. He grabbed Bakugo with the other hand and tossed him gently toward the stunned heroes. Hold tight. The man bent his knees. Boom. The concrete beneath them shattered. They shot into the air, not with the floaty leap of All Might, but with the terrifying velocity of a bullet. The G-force nearly made Izuku black out. The city became a blur. The wind roared so loud it was silent. Seconds later they landed. They were on a beach. But not just any beach, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was a dumping ground, piled high with mountains of trash, tires, and scrap metal. It was deserted. The man landed softly amidst a pile of old refrigerators. As soon as his feet touched the sand, he collapsed. Mr. Izuku scrambled up, rushing to the man's side. The man was convulsing. His skin was burning up. It's okay, the man wheezed, rolling onto his back. He stared up at the twilight stars. Just pushed it a little too far. Ran the tank dry. I need to get help, Izuku panicked, reaching for his phone. No! The man's hand shot out, gripping Izuku's wrist. His grip was weak, but it felt like iron. No doctors. They can't. My biology isn't human. They just cut me open. Izuku froze. Not human? The man smiled weakly. He reached up and unbuttoned the top of his flannel shirt. Underneath, revealed against the blue fabric of a t-shirt, was a symbol. It was a diamond shape. Inside was a red stylized S. Or maybe a snake? It looked alien. My name, the man rasped, is Kal-El. But on the world I adopted, they called me Clark. Or Superman. Superman? Izuku tested the name. He had never heard of a hero named Superman. Are you a foreign hero? From America? From further away than that, Clark whispered. I'm from a planet called Krypton. Or I was. It's gone now. Izuku's mind raced. An alien? Aliens were theorized to be the origin of quirks, but no one had ever confirmed it. I'm dying, son, Clark said matter-of-factly. I crossed a bridge between dimensions. Between realities. It cost me everything. My cells are deteriorating. The solar radiation of this sun is different from my Earth's. It's not sustaining me. It's slowly poisoning me. Why are you telling me this? Izuku asked, tears pricking his eyes. Why did you save me? Clark turned his head, looking at Izuku with those intense, ancient eyes. I've been here for a week, Clark said. Watching. Listening. This world, it's obsessed with quirks. With flashy powers. I saw that big blonde man today. The one they call the symbol. All Might, Izuku sniffled. He's a good man, Clark said. But he's tired. And he's afraid. I saw him in the crowd, boy. He wanted to step in, but he hesitated. He weighed the risks. He measured his limits. Clark coughed again, his breath hitching. But you, Clark pointed a shaking finger at Izuku's chest. You didn't weigh anything. You didn't have power. You didn't have a plan. You knew you could die. But you ran in anyway. Izuku looked down. My body just moved. It was stupid. It was heroic, Clark corrected firmly. That is the only thing that cannot be taught. Strength? I can teach you to bench press a mountain. Flight? It's just falling and missing the ground. But the instinct to save, to act when others freeze, that is the heart of a hero. Clark tried to sit up, groaning with effort. I don't have a quirk to give you, Clark said. My powers aren't a genetic mutation like your people have. They are my biology. My cells act as living solar batteries. My muscle density, my sensory input. It is all Kryptonian. He looked at Izuku with a solemn intensity. I can't save myself. It's too late for me. But I can't let this end here. The House of El. It stands for hope. And this world needs a different kind of hope. Not a pillar that holds up the roof until it cracks. but a symbol that shows them they can fly. Clark held out his hand. His palm began to glow with a soft, golden light. It wasn't fire, it looked like liquid sunlight. I possess a piece of technology. A biomatrix from my ship. It's inside me now. I can use the last of my life force to transfer my genetic coding, my solar reserves, into you. It will rewrite your DNA. It will make you, like me. Izuku's eyes widened. Rewrite my DNA? But I'm just Deku. I'm useless. You are the only person in that crowd who acted like a Superman, Clark said. The power is dangerous, Izuku. It is a burden. You will hear every cry for help. You will feel the weight of the world. You will never be normal again. Clark's vision was blurring. He knew he had seconds, maybe minutes. Do you want to be a hero? Clark asked. Not for fame. Not for glory. But to save them? To catch them when they fall? Izuku looked at the dying man. He looked at the hand offering him the universe. He thought of the doctor. He thought of his mother crying. He thought of All Might turning his back. And then he thought of Bakugo's scared eyes. Izuku wiped his face. He stood up straight. The fear was there, but the determination was stronger. I do, Izuku said, his voice steady. I want to save everyone with a smile. Clark Kent smiled. It was a genuine, Kansas farm boy smile that took 10 years off his face. Good answer. Clark placed his glowing hand on Izuku's chest, right over his heart. This is going to hurt, Clark warned gently. I'm ready, Izuku said. Then, up and away. The golden light surged. It didn't feel like receiving a quirk. It didn't feel like a switch flipping. It felt like swallowing the sun. Agony ripped through Izuku. Every cell in his body screamed as it was torn apart and stitched back together. His blood boiled. His bones cracked and hardened. He threw his head back and screamed, a sound that was drowned out by the sudden, massive displacement of air that blasted the piles of trash away from them in a perfect circle. The world turned white. When the light faded, silence returned to the beach. The man in the flannel shirt lay still. His chest did not rise. The glow was gone from his skin, leaving him looking like a simple, peaceful old man who was finally resting after a very long shift. Beside him, a boy lay in the sand. Izuku gasped, his eyes snapping open. The world was loud. He could hear the waves crashing. Not just the splash, but the individual grains of sand grinding against each other in the water. He could hear a siren wailing 3 miles away. He could hear the heartbeat of a seagull flying overhead. He sat up. He felt light. Terrifyingly light. As if gravity had decided to loosen its grip on him personally. He looked at his hands. They looked the same, but they felt different. They hummed with energy. He clenched his fist, and the air popped inside his palm. He looked at the man beside him. Mr. Clark? Izuku whispered. There was no answer. Tears welled in Izuku's eyes. He didn't know this man. He had met him for less than an hour. Yet the grief that washed over him was profound. He reached out to close the man's eyes. As he touched the flannel shirt, his fingers brushed the chest. He felt something hard underneath. Izuku unbuttoned the shirt. There, resting on the man's chest, was the crest. The diamond S. It was actually a piece of fabric, like a costume, but it felt nearly indestructible. Beside it lay a small, clear crystal that pulsed with a faint white light. Izuku picked up the crystal. A holographic image flickered into existence above it. It was Clark, looking healthy, wearing the blue suit and red cape. If you're seeing this, the hologram said, it means it worked. Hello, Izuku. There is much to teach you. About your powers. About Krypton. About how to shave without melting your bathroom mirror. The hologram smiled. You are the last son of a dead world now, in a way. But you are also a child of Earth. You have the heart of a hero. Wear the crest. Make it mean something. The hologram faded. Izuku looked at the crest in his hand. He looked at the sky. He wiped his tears. He stood up. He didn't know how to fly yet. He didn't know how to control the cacophony of sounds assaulting his ears. But he knew one thing. He wasn't quirkless anymore. Izuku Midoriya looked at the horizon, clutching the S to his chest. I won't let you down, he whispered to the wind. And for the first time in his life, the wind seemed to whisper back, carrying him forward. The alarm clock didn't stand a chance. At 6 a.m., the digital device on Izuku Midoriya's bedside table let out its first shrill beep. To a normal human, it was an annoyance. To Izuku Midoriya, whose auditory canals had been rewritten on a molecular level overnight, it sounded like a nuclear siren screaming inside his skull. Gah! Izuku flailed in his sleep, his hand lashing out to hit the snooze button. It was a reflex. A simple, groggy motion he had performed 1,000 times before. But this time, there was zero resistance. Crunch. The plastic casing disintegrated. Metal springs pinged off the walls like bullets. The entire nightstand groaned and collapsed into splinters under the weight of his hand. Izuku sat bolt upright, his breath hitching in his throat. He looked at his hand. It was unblemished. He looked at the alarm clock. It was now a pancake of circuitry and plastic embedded 2 inches deep into the floorboards. "Oh no," Izuku whispered, but his own voice sounded wrong. It boomed in his chest, vibrating through his ribs like a subwoofer. And then, the noise hit him. Not the noise of the clock, that was dead, but the noise of everything else. He heard the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. It sounded like a jet engine. He heard the water rushing through the pipes in the neighbor's apartment 3 doors down. He heard a dog barking. Not outside, but blocks away. He heard the heartbeat of a sparrow resting on the power lines outside. Thump thump. Thump thump. Too loud, he gasped, clapping his hands over his ears. It didn't help. His hands didn't block the sound, they just muffled the air. The vibration still traveled through his skin, through the floor, through the very air. Then came the smell. Toast. Someone was burning toast. But it wasn't just burnt toast. He could smell the specific brand of wheat, the carbonization of the crust, the melting margarine. He could smell the exhaust of a truck passing on the highway a mile away. He could smell the ozone of the coming rain. "Izuku?" His mother's voice drifted from the kitchen. To him, it sounded like she was shouting through a megaphone right next to his ear. "Honey? Did something fall?" That was a loud crash. I'm okay," Izuku shouted back. He winced. His own volume control was gone. He sounded like he was declaring war. He scrambled out of bed. His foot hit the floor, and the wood groaned in protest, a spider web of cracks appearing under his heel. He froze. "I'm heavy," he realized. "I feel light, but the world feels like it's made of wet tissue paper." He took a step, treating the floor like it was thin ice. He reached for the doorknob. He tried to be gentle. He visualized turning it with the delicacy of a surgeon. The knob sheared off in his hand. The metal rod twisted like putty. Izuku stared at the broken brass in his palm. Panic, cold and sharp, began to rise in his chest. This wasn't a quirk. Quirks had limits. Quirks had on and off switches. Bakugo had to sweat to make explosions. Uraraka had to touch things. This was just him. He was a monster in a world of cardboard. Getting out of the apartment without destroying it took 20 agonizing minutes. He had to lie to his mother, shouting through the door that he was sick and going for a walk to get fresh air, all while holding the door closed with a finger because the latch was broken. He wore his oversized yellow backpack, filled with bottled water and a blanket. He ran. He didn't run like he used to. He pushed off the pavement, and found himself crossing half a block in a single stride. The wind whipped his hair, and the friction felt hot against his skin. He arrived at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park in minutes. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the trash-filled beach in hues of gold and rust. "Mr. Clark," Izuku whispered, scrambling over a pile of old tires. He had hidden the body last night. It was the most illegal, terrifying thing he had ever done. After the transfer, after the hologram had faded, Izuku had found that Clark was still breathing, barely. It was a shallow, imperceptible rhythm, maybe one breath every 5 minutes. Izuku hadn't known what to do. Hospitals would experiment on him. Police would arrest Izuku. So, he had carried the man, who felt surprisingly light to him now, to a secluded cove formed by a rusted-out hull of a tanker ship and a mountain of washing machines. He reached the cove. Clark was there, lying on the bed of old couch cushions Izuku had scavenged. He looked terrible. His skin was translucent, the veins showing blue, and spiderwebbed. He looked like a statue made of ash. Please, Izuku whimpered, dropping to his knees. The sand turned to glass under the impact of his knees, but he didn't notice. Please wake up. I don't know what's happening to me. I broke my door. I can hear the worms in the ground. He pulled out the crystal he had taken from Clark's chest. The sunstone. Help me, Izuku pleaded with the rock. You showed me the hologram last night. Show me again. The crystal pulsed. A soft hum resonated, a sound Izuku felt in his teeth. A beam of white light shot up, fanning out to create the image of the man in the blue suit. Not the old, dying man in front of him, but the legend. The memory. Kal-El is in a state of torpor, the hologram said. The voice was calm, authoritative. The transfer of the biomatrix exhausted his solar reserves. His physiology has shut down to preserve his core consciousness. How do I save him? Izuku begged. He requires direct, unfiltered solar radiation. Yellow spectral class. The Earth's sun is sufficient, but he is currently in shadow. Izuku looked up. The hull of the ship was blocking the sunrise. Sunlight. Okay. Sunlight. Izuku looked at the tanker hull. It was a massive piece of rusted steel, easily weighing 4 or 5 tons. Yesterday, it would have been an immovable wall. Today, Izuku walked up to the steel wall. He placed his hands against the cold, flaking rust. One for all. He muttered out of habit, invoking the name of his idol's power. Then he shook his head. No. Not that. Just push. He braced his legs. He pushed. There was no strain. No burning in his muscles. It felt like pushing a shopping cart. The metal groaned, screeching as it slid across the sand. Izuku shoved the multi-ton barrier 10 feet to the left, carving a trench in the beach. The morning sun flooded the cove. The light hit Clark's face. The effect was instantaneous. It wasn't like a human waking up. It was like a plant undergoing photosynthesis at super speed. Color rushed back into Clark's cheeks. The gray pallor vanished, replaced by a healthier, albeit wrinkled, complexion. His chest rose, a deep, greedy breath. Clark Kent's eyes fluttered open. The blue irises seemed to glow for a fraction of a second. He groaned, shifting his weight. Did anyone get the license plate of that truck? Mr. Clark. Izuku sobbed, falling backward. You're alive! Clark blinked, adjusting his glasses which were miraculously still on his face. He looked at Izuku, then at the moved tanker hull, then at the sun. You moved the ship? Clark rasped. His voice was stronger now, though still aged. I just pushed it. I didn't mean to shove it that far. Izuku gripped his hair. Everything is wrong, Mr. Clark. Everything is made of paper. I can hear everything. I can see through your hand. Clark looked at his own hand. X-ray vision. That came in early. He sat up slowly, leaning his back against a washing machine. He looked at the panicking boy with infinite patience. Breathe, Izuku. I can't. If I breathe too hard I might blow the trash away. I broke my alarm clock. I'm going to hurt someone. I'm dangerous. Clark smiled. It was a sad, knowing smile. Welcome to the world of cardboard. Cardboard? That's what the world feels like to us, Clark said. When I first came to my Earth, I was terrified. I was afraid to hug my parents because I thought I'd snap their spines. I was afraid to speak because I thought I'd shatter the windows. How do I stop it? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. How do I turn it off? You don't, Clark said gently. This isn't a quirk, Izuku. You can't suppress it. You have to master it. Clark patted the sand beside him. Sit. The first lesson isn't about strength. You have plenty of that now. The first lesson is Torquazamvo. Tor what? It's a Kryptonian mental martial art, Clark explained. Warrior of the mind. Right now, your brain is processing too much information. Your senses are dialed to 11, and you have no filter. You need to build a dam. Clark closed his eyes. Close your eyes. Listen to my voice. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. Okay, don't fight the noise, Clark instructed. Imagine the sounds are water. Right now you are drowning in the ocean. The waves are crashing over you. Izuku nodded. That was exactly how it felt. Now, Clark's voice was steady, an anchor in the storm. Imagine a fortress. A quiet place. A white room in the center of a glacier. The walls are thick. The doors are heavy. Izuku tried. He visualized a fortress. But his fortress looked like UA high. Push the water out, Clark said. Don't ignore it. Acknowledge it, and then place it outside the wall. The bird's heartbeat. It stays outside. The traffic? Outside. The wind? Outside. Izuku frowned, concentrating. He visualized the sounds as physical objects and shoved them out the gates of his mental fortress. Thump thump. The bird was gone. Whoosh. The water pipes faded. Screech. The traffic dulled to a background hum. Slowly, the roar of the world faded into a manageable hum. The headache that had been splitting his skull began to recede. I think I did it, Izuku whispered. Open your eyes, Clark said. Izuku opened them. The world was still sharp, terrifyingly HD, but it wasn't assaulting him. He could focus on Clark's face without zooming in on the molecules of his skin. Better? Clark asked. Much, Izuku exhaled. Thank you? Clark looked around at the trash heaps surrounding them. This place, it's a mess. It's Dagoba Beach, Izuku said. People dump illegal waste here. It's been like this for years. Clark struggled to his feet. He was still old, still frail compared to the god he once was, but he could stand. He picked up a rusted toaster. He looked at it with a strange fondness. When I was a boy, Clark said, my father told me that work was the best way to learn control. Farm work. Balin' hay. Fixin' fences. He tossed the toaster to Izuku. Izuku caught it. His thumb accidentally punched through the metal casing. Oops, Izuku squeaked. You have 10 months until the entrance exam for that school, UA, right? Clark asked. Yes. How did you know? You talk in your sleep, Clark grinned. Loudly, he gestured to the miles of trash. The mountains of tires, the rotting furniture, the scrap metal. This is your farm, Izuku. You want to master this power? You want to be a vessel for the House of El? Then you clear this beach. Izuku looked at the impossible amount of trash. All of it? Every scrap, Clark said. But there's a catch. Clark picked up an empty glass bottle. He held it up to the sun. You don't lift with your back. You lift with your mind. If you crush a single can, if you shatter a single bottle, if you break anything, you start that section over. Izuku stared at his hands. But I break everything I touch. Then you learn not to, Clark said, his voice hardening slightly. Because if you can't hold a glass bottle without breaking it, you can't hold a person. And if you can't hold a person, you can't save them. Month 1-2, the bull in the china shop. The training was hell. Not because it was heavy. Izuku discovered quickly that weight had become an abstract concept. He could lift a burnout car as easily as a backpack. The struggle wasn't the lift, it was the structural integrity of the object. If he grabbed a car by the bumper and lifted, the bumper ripped off. If he grabbed a fridge by the handle, the door flew into the ocean. Surface area. Clark would shout from his lawn chair. He had set up a makeshift camp under the ship's hull, the fortress of junk, he called it. Spread your fingers. Distribute the force. You are applying 10 tons of pressure to a square inch of cheap aluminum. Izuku stood in the sand, holding the remains of a microwave he had accidentally pulverized. It's so hard. It feels like I'm handling soap bubbles. Turquoise vo. Clark instructed. Focus. Be the ocean. Be the stone. Izuku spent the first month just learning how to walk on sand without launching himself into the air. He had to relearn his own body. He had to constantly consciously repress his strength. Every step was a calculation. Don't push. Just step. Every grip was a math problem. Friction coefficient. Tensile strength. Clark was a relentless teacher. He didn't yell like a drill sergeant. He was worse. He was a disappointed grandpa. You crushed the toaster, Izuku. I sneezed. And if you sneeze while holding a bus full of children? Izuku turned pale. Right. Sorry. He learned to meditate. He sat on top of the pile of trash for hours, practicing the mental barriers. He learned to dial his hearing up and down. Channel 1, conversation. Channel 2, the beach. Channel 3, the city. Channel 4, global, too scary, don't go there yet. One afternoon, Izuku was trying to move a massive, double-door refrigerator. It was the boss fight of appliances. Gentle, Izuku muttered, sweat beading on his forehead not from exertion, but from concentration. Gentle. He wrapped his arms around it. He lifted. The fridge hovered. Good, Clark noted. Now walk it to the truck. Izuku took a step. A crab scurried across his foot. Startled, Izuku twitched. His arms clamped shut. Crunch. The refrigerator imploded. In a millisecond, the massive appliance was compressed into a perfect, dense cube of metal and plastic, roughly the size of a basketball. Izuku stood there, holding the heavy cube, horrified. Clark burst out laughing. It was a wheezy, old man laugh, but it was genuine. Well, Clark wiped a tear from his eye. At least it'll take up less space in the landfill. Nice compression. You made a diamond out of the compressor coal. I hate this, Izuku groaned, dropping the cube. It landed with a thud that shook the ground. Month 3-4. The School of Hard Knocks. Returning to Aldera Junior High was a different kind of torture. Izuku had to pretend to be Deku. He had to hunch his shoulders, which was hard, because his posture naturally wanted to be perfect now. He had to pretend to struggle in P class. During the grip strength test, Izuku sweated nervously. If I squeeze, I'll turn the device into dust. He lightly wrapped his fingers around the handle. He barely engaged his muscles. Beep. 56 kilograms. Hey, Midoriya got a decent score, a classmate noted. Did he start working out? Still a Deku, Bakugo scoffed from across the room. He had been quiet lately. Ever since the sludge incident, ever since the ice guy had vanished, Bakugo had been watching Izuku with suspicious eyes. After class, Bakugo cornered him. You, Bakugo growled, slamming a hand against the wall next to Izuku's head. Izuku flinched, an old habit, but his eyes tracked Bakugo's movement in slow motion. He saw the sweat glands in Bakugo's palm opening. He smelled the nitroglycerin priming. Where have you been? Bakugo demanded. You disappear every day after school. You're not studying. You're not gaming. I'm just cleaning up the beach, Izuku said. It was the truth. Don't lie to me. Bakugo set off an explosion. Usually Izuku would cower. But his senses were faster now. He saw the spark before it ignited. Without thinking, Izuku blew a puff of air. Just a small, sharp exhalation. Phhht. The gust of wind hit Bakugo's palm. It blew the explosion out like a candle. Bakugo stared at his hand. Smoke curled harmlessly away. He looked at Izuku, his eyes wide with confusion and a flicker of fear. What did you do? My breath. I learned a breathing exercise. Izuku stammered. Yoga. It's yoga, Kaken. He ducked under Bakugo's arm and ran away at a speed that was suspiciously close to an Olympic sprint. Bakugo stood in the hallway, looking at his hand. Yoga? Month 5-8, the man of tomorrow. The beach was changing. The mountains of trash were receding. The sand, once buried under layers of grime, was seeing the sun for the first time in years. Izuku was changing too. He wasn't bulking up like a bodybuilder. Kryptonian muscle was dense, compact. He looked lean, like a swimmer, but there was a hardness to him. His jawline had sharpened. He no longer needed glasses. He had stopped wearing them week 2, claiming contacts. But the biggest change was in his eyes. They were blue, brighter than before. And they held a stillness. Clark sat on the newly cleared section of the beach, watching Izuku juggle 3 transmission engines. Higher, Clark commanded. Izuku threw them 50 feet into the air. He caught them with the grace of a ballerina. Not a scratch on the metal. Good. Put them down. Izuku set them down gently. Come here, Izuku. Izuku trotted over. He sat on the sand. You're ready for the next step, Clark said. Not the physical. The ideological. Clark pulled out a small notebook. It wasn't one of Izuku's analysis journals. It was an old, leather-bound book Clark had kept in his pocket. You know All Might, Clark said. He is the pillar. He holds up society. When he is gone, the society crumbles. Izuku nodded. That's why everyone is scared of him retiring. That is a flaw, Clark said. A hero should not be a crutch. A hero should be an example. Clark drew a symbol in the sand. The diamond. The S. On my world, this didn't mean Superman. It is the coat of arms of the House of L. It means hope.